We Don't Talk Anymore, Cliff Richard, the number one that sealed what they called my comeback. As the 60s turned into the 70s, I had become distracted from my music career. It no longer had the same all-consuming prominence in my life. Becoming a Christian had led me to reevaluate what I was all about and what my main priorities were, and the answer was my faith. Accepting Jesus into my life had opened up new lines of activity for me. I was playing gospel tours, speaking at rallies, making religious TV shows. I had also begun hosting my Saturday evening It's Cliff Richard show on BBC One. I had probably taken my eye off my recording career. I was basically treading water. When I made albums, I had got into the bad habit of hardly being in the studio. I'd get together with Norrie Paramore to select the songs from the pile of demos we got sent. Then Norrie would get a band together and record the tracks without me. I'd wander in when they were finished and add my vocals to them. So I had definitely slipped a little with my music, and in the public's eye. But I'm glad to say that I didn't completely disappear as a singer. As I became more settled with my faith and with who I was, my focus returned to my records. And that coincided with a major change at the head of my musical team. Norrie Paramore had signed me up in 1958 and put out Move It. It had made me a star. Norrie had also overseen and produced every record I'd made since. However, by 1972, he was nearly 60, had become resident conductor of the BBC Midland Radio Orchestra, and was winding down his music executive career. Norrie told me that he felt he couldn't do any more for me. He thought it was time I recorded with somebody younger than him. I was sorry to see him go, but I guess he and I had maybe slipped into a bit of a rut. But I'll always be grateful for the faith Norrie had in that 17-year-old Cliff Richard. Luckily, my manager, Peter Gormley, was always a can-do character. He quickly found me a new producer to work with, a fellow Australian called Dave Mackay. David was a good guy and introduced me to two English-born musicians who had grown up in Australia, guitarist Terry Britton and bassist Alan Tarney. They were both to play major parts in my future career. David also diagnosed that I had become detached from the process of making records. He got me back in the studio with the band every day. That was how I always worked with the Shadows, and I liked going back to being more involved in the creative process. I even wrote part of my next album, The 31st of February Street, myself. I was proud of it. But the public didn't really take to it, and it wasn't a commercial success. Despite that, I had enjoyed recording it, and it felt like a bit of a comeback. So, who should produce me next? The answer was to be found very close to home. Since the Shadows split, Bruce Welch had kept busy. He had played with Hank and John Farrar in a group called Marvin Welch and Farrar, and co-produced a hit single, If Not For You, and album, Olivia, by his girlfriend Olivia Newton-John. Peter Gormley asked what I thought about Bruce producing my next album. Well, what did I think? I thought I'd like to give it a go. I saw our close friendship as an advantage. We should be at ease working together. I knew from my past experience that Bruce could be a hard taskmaster in the studio, but, well, maybe that was what I needed right now. There would certainly be no slacking. That preconception was confirmed when Bruce and I had our initial meeting to discuss the project. Bruce explained that he was already chasing up his many songwriter contacts for new songs. Then he gave me a steely-eyed stipulation. If we're going to do this album, Cliff, we're going to do it properly, he insisted, and that means we don't do any songs that sound anything at all like Living Doll, Summer Holiday, or Congratulations. Now, Bruce wasn't dissing those hits. He liked them. How could he not like Summer Holiday? He had co-written it with Brian Bennett. He meant that he wanted us to make a record that was current and contemporary and didn't slip into a predictable groove. I was pleased because I wanted that as well. The seeds of the album that was to become I'm Nearly Famous was planted very quickly. I told the story in The Dreamer of how Bruce turned up at my house in Weybridge one afternoon, waving a cassette tape. He sprinted up the stairs to my music room, 2 at a time, in his eagerness to play it to me. As soon as he pressed play on my tape deck, I understood Bruce's enthusiasm, and I shared it. Over gentle opening music, a male voice sighed, "I've had many times, I can tell you," and rose to a poignant chorus, "But these misunites are the longest." Wow! I held out my forearms to Bruce. "Look, I've got goosebumps," I gasped. "So have I," he grinned back. Misunites was a lush, gorgeous ballad. When Bruce and I got started on the album in the studio with the band, I loved recording it. On a lot of my softer, less rock and roll material like that, I take vocal inspiration from the way Peggy Lee sang her hits like Fever. I always loved her gentleness of tone. One of my band members, Terry Britton, had already played me a song that he had co-written, Devil Woman. I liked it from the off. It had a story, fab tune, great chorus, while also having quite severe misgivings about its lyrics. Terry Britton was to tell me the opening riff of Devil Woman was the beginning of I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye, turned upside down. I had no idea what he was talking about. Then I listened to it again, and I got it. Devil Woman was the story of a fortune teller, crystal ball on the table, who had bad intentions, evil on her mind. I wasn't sure how my fans, used to gentle songs such as Summer Holiday, would react to such edgy material. Also, should a practicing Christian really be singing songs about dabbling with the occult? I thought it through, decided recording it would do no harm, and sang it well, or so I thought, on the first studio take. At the end, I looked to Bruce, awaiting his approval. It didn't come. "Cliff," he sighed from behind the production desk, "can you do it again, please, and this time in the same key as the song?" Bruce is legendary, or is it notorious? Perfectionism in the studio was in full force. One day, I walked in and into a very tense atmosphere. The musicians and engineers all had their heads down while Bruce had his ear glued to one of the giant speakers listening to a track. "Play it again, with the lead guitar taken out," he instructed an engineer. The guy did so. It sounded fine to me. "Right, now take the bass out," Bruce ordered. Yep, still sounded okay. "Okay, now take Cliff's vocal out." Huh? Just what is going on here? Bruce listened intently to the drum track. "Aha, that's it," he declared triumphantly. "That cymbal is off the beat." "Bruce, nobody in the world will hear that," I told him. "I don't care. I heard it," he barked. I made a joke, managed to snap Bruce out of his bad mood, and we got cracking. Afterwards, an engineer took me to one side. "Cliff, I'm glad you turned up," he whispered, because that session was going badly downhill. Yet occasional aberrations like that were worth it for what Bruce brought to the sessions and to the album. His obsessiveness and attention to detail meant that he was right on top of all the latest recording techniques. As he'd promised, he made I'm Nearly Famous a current, contemporary album. You have to bear in mind how much studio technology had changed since 1958 when Move It was released in mono with a sleeve promising also available in stereo. They had invented 4-track machines, then 8-track, and then digital technology came in, and I could suddenly sound like a 100-voice choir. I remember asking how digital recording technology works and being told it remembers music in numbers. I was baffled. Huh? How do you remember music in numbers? If I'm honest, I'm still none the wiser. Bruce also shares my love of great harmonies and enlisted the help of a backing vocal group led by a guy called Tony Rivers. Now, Tony, as I mentioned earlier, is the king of harmonies. Bruce would ask, "Do you have a harmony for here, Tony?" And he'd have the exact right answer. Every time. Tony thought he dreamt in harmonies. It all meant that the song sounded thoroughly modern. This was as important to me as it was to Bruce. We didn't want anyone to listen to I'm Nearly Famous and say, "Oh, it's the same old Cliff Richard," because it really wasn't. Musically, it was bang up to date. In the 70s, artists such as Mud, Sho Waddy Waddy, and Alvin Stardust were reviving 50s rock and roll. Alvin Stardust always wore leather gloves when he sang. I knew Alvin by his real name Shane and his wife, the actress Lisa Goddard. I always thought of him as an actor rather than a rock and roller, but he was a good singer. I had nothing against those guys who were very good at what they did, but I didn't want to be a retro rocker, even if I had been there the first time round. I wanted to be current, relevant. We succeeded. I'm Nearly Famous sounded sharp and fresh, and it got terrific reviews. Critics and real people began calling it my Renaissance or comeback album. I wasn't so sure about the comeback bit. After all, I'd never really been away. But it felt good to be back in the game. As I said earlier, where I used to be competing with Marty Wilde for chart places, now I was competing with his daughter Kim, and with Adam Ant, Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, and the Eurythmics. And I loved it. I wasn't afraid of any of them. I felt that I deserved to be in that fight. It's where I belong. I've never tried to hide that I'm competitive about chart positions. Any musician who tells you they don't check the charts is fibbing. Nobody makes a record and hopes to get to number 38. You want to be number 1, and if you can't, you want to be as close as possible. I'm Nearly Famous wasn't a number 1 album, but it got to number 5, my best performance in 10 years, and I was delighted with that, especially as it came out at a time when the atmosphere wasn't the best for long-standing recording artists such as me. I'm Nearly Famous was released in 1976 at the height of punk rock, where bands like The Clash and the Sex Pistols were sneering that established stars like Elvis, Elton, Rod Stewart, and me were boring old hat. I have to say that the feeling was mutual, because I thought they were, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, rubbish. Most of the punk bands were just racket for me. They hardly even qualified as music. They would hit one chord, clang, and then shout over the top. It was absolutely awful stuff, and for me the big question is, where are they nowadays? Hardly any of them lasted. Frankly, I'm not surprised. I did like one singer from the punk era, Elvis Costello, and his song Watching the Detectives. But he is talented, so he was hardly a punk at all. I've met his wife as well, the jazz singer Diana Krall, who is absolutely delightful. Punk rock was all about attitude, really. You still sometimes get people copying it. I remember Chris Evans, the DJ, claiming he'd burned all of my records. He was trying to be a bad boy, and for his trouble, he found my fans picketing his studio. Today, Chris is charming and great to be interviewed by. After I'm Nearly Famous, Bruce Welch was to produce my next 2 albums, Every Face Tells a Story and Greenlight. After that, I felt it was time for a change, so I made my following album, 1979's Rock and Roll Juvenile, in Paris with Terry Britton producing. Bruce had wanted to carry on doing so and was a bit miffed. Yet it was still Bruce who came up with the masterstroke that was to give me the song that I have chosen for this book, We Don't Talk Anymore. It all came about because, as I said, Bruce Welch has the best ears going when it comes to spotting a hit. Two musicians I had recently worked with, Alan Tarney and Trevor Spencer, had a side project, Tarney Spencer Band. Alan had written We Don't Talk Anymore for them to perform. But when he happened to play it to Bruce, Bruce had other plans. I know who needs to record this, he said. Cliff. Terry and I had pretty much wrapped up Rock and Roll Juvenile by now, and were putting the finishing touches to the album in a studio in Wimbledon when Bruce and Alan turned up one day. They played me We Don't Talk Anymore. I loved it from the off and asked them to keep it for me. Keep it for you? Bruce asked incredulously. You need to release it now. Peter Gormley and EMI had also heard the song and loved it, so we recorded it with Bruce producing and put it out as a single. It entered the chart at number 35 on the 15th of July 1979, and then it began climbing. The following week, it was number 23, and then number 14. The next week, it shot up 12 places to number 2, crikey. It was there for 2 weeks, behind I Don't Like Mondays by Bob Geldof's band, the Boomtown Rats. Had it peaked? No! On 19th of August, 1979, We Don't Talk Anymore went up 1 place to number 1. Wow, it was my first number 1 in over 10 years, since Congratulations in 1968. It made me feel my comeback, if that was what it was complete. We Don't Talk Anymore topped the chart for 4 weeks, was number 1 in 7 countries, and even got to number 7 in America thanks to Elton John. More on that in the next chapter. The funny thing was, I still didn't want to include We Don't Talk Anymore on Rock and Roll Juvenile. I felt it didn't fit. EMI overruled me, and it was probably for the best, as the album was to go to number 3, also my best performance in years. We Don't Talk Anymore went on to sell more than 4 million copies. It remains my best-selling song ever. Tragically, while it was number 1, Norrie Paramore passed away, aged 65. I was broken-hearted, yet also glad that dear Norrie, who took me to the very top of the pop world, had lived to see me back there again. Because I think he will have enjoyed that.